Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and hello everyone. We're supposed to start with a new topic for this week actually, but then because of lockdown, unfortunately we cannot start with the topic, and also I'm not sure whether you remember or not what we learned last time. So before I start with the new topic, I just want to recap with the old topic that we learned just before the school holiday, which is this one here about atomic structure and the periodic table. So I'm just going to go through the important things for this topic in this video. So this topic is about the atomic structure. So what does it look like inside an atom? So inside an atom there are three particles: the proton, the neutron, and the electron. An atom has the same number of protons and electrons. If there are 6 protons in an atom, there will always be the same number, which is 6 electrons. We usually write down the atoms or the elements using this sort of format. So you will have the symbol, and then the number at the bottom is the proton number. That is the number of protons. In this case, this is carbon, and it has 6 protons. So how many electrons does carbon have? Should be also be the same, like I told you before. If it has 6 protons, then that must mean it also has 6 electrons. So even without the symbol here telling you how many electrons, you should be able to figure it out just by looking at the number of protons. And then the number at the top, the bigger number is what we call the nucleon number. So that is the number of proton plus the number of neutron. So proton, there are 6 proton, and there are also 6 neutron. Plus them together, and the nucleon number is 12. Okay, don't confuse between nucleon number and neutron number. So these two, okay, so don't confuse between these two words, neutron and nucleon. The other thing that you need to know in this topic is how to draw the electronic structure of an atom. So that means how to draw the electrons inside an atom and how they are arranged. The electronic structure, the rings represent a shell or an orbit of the electron. So the first ring is usually what we call the first shell, the second ring is the second shell, and the third ring is the third shell. So these represents where the electrons orbit inside the atom. Now when you are drawing this, it's very important for you to know what's the maximum number of electrons the shell can take. So for the first shell, only 2 electrons can be there. The second shell, only 8 electrons can be there, maximum. And then the third shell, only 8 electrons can be there. Okay, now I will show you how to draw the electronic structure of an atom. Let's take magnesium, for example. Magnesium has, you have to check from the periodic table how many electrons does magnesium have. So here, very easily I can check online or Google. You can also do the same thing. This is a periodic table that I found online, and you will see magnesium here. Okay, so magnesium has 12 protons. Magnesium has 12 protons. That will tell me magnesium will have 12 electrons. Okay, so that's the first thing you need to know before you draw the electronic structure of magnesium. Now that you know there are 12 electrons, then let's draw the middle part first. So let's just use a dot there, or a black circle to that is the nucleus of the electron. Okay, and then after that you can draw the electrons. So this is the first shell, the first ring, the first shell, and 2 electrons will go there. So 1 and 2. Okay, usually you cannot draw more because only 2 electrons can be in the first shell. If you want to draw the others, okay, you want to draw the other 10, you have to draw a new shell. So that's the second shell. Okay, so it doesn't look very nice here, but that's because I'm using a mouse to draw. So the second shell, then you fill in the second shell. So 1 through 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, So now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 electrons already. So the second shell is now full. It can only take in 8 electrons. Now because that's full, you then must draw another shell, move on to another shell, and fill that in with the rest of the electrons. So at the moment we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 electrons right now. So there are 12 electrons in total. So let's just put in the rest of the electrons outside in the third shell. Okay, and then now you have 12 electrons there. You can stop, and that's the correct drawing of the atomic structure of magnesium. Bear in mind, when you are drawing this, make sure the electrons are in pairs. These two are in pairs, right here. Okay, and also here. These two do not need to be in pairs because they are the only two in the first shell. Okay, but for the second and third shell, and the fourth shell, you have to draw them in pairs first. Okay, so let's do another example, one final one. Let's take calcium and calcium has 20 electrons. Okay, I know that because earlier I checked the periodic table. So again, you draw the nucleus first, and then you draw the first shell. First shell, there are 20 electrons to fill in, so the first two will go here. Now it's full. You then move on to the second shell, fill in the second shell. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, now it's full. Move on to the next shell, which is the third shell, because the second shell is full. We have 10, and then continue 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Now that the third shell is also full, we move on to the fourth shell. Okay, and so there's 18 now, 19, and then 20. Okay, so that is the electronic configuration or electronic structure for calcium. Okay. Another thing that you need to know for this topic is you need to be able to write down the electronic structure of the atom using the numbers. Okay, or otherwise this is known as the electronic. Sometimes this is called the electronic structure, but also sometimes it's called the electronic configuration. Okay, let me just write it down here for you. Configuration. So fluorine is 2, 7. So there are 2 electrons in the first shell, and there are 7 electrons in the second shell. So you write it down as 2, 7. Neon 2, 8. So 2 in the first shell, 8 in the second shell. Sodium 2, 8, 1. So 2 in the first shell, 8 in the second shell, and then 1 in the third shell. And then for calcium, 2, 8, 8, 2. Another thing that you need to know is what we call the outermost shell of the electrons. So that is basically the shell that is at the very edge of the electrons. And what do we mean by valency electrons? Valency electrons, those are basically the number of electrons in the outermost shell. So for fluorine, let's look at fluorine. Fluorine, the second shell is the outermost shell, and it has how many electrons? 7. So that means 7 is the valency electrons for fluorine. How many valency electrons does neon have? You look at the last shell, it has 8. So there are 8 valency electrons for neon. For sodium, you can just look at the last number. It has 1 valency electron. And for calcium, it has 2 valency electrons. Okay, so the other thing that you need to know is how can you tell the group number of an element. So if it's in, this is the periodic table. You can see here. So this first one is group 1. This is group 2. This is group 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So the ones in the middle here, it doesn't have a group number, okay? So don't worry about that. You can look at the valency electron, and that will tell you the group number of that element. Let me just give you an example. Okay, so nitrogen has 7 electrons. Nitrogen has a valency electron of 5, so it belongs in group 5. And you can see here, where is nitrogen? It's there. Okay, so it's in group 5. Okay, let's look at another example. Fluorine, it has an electronic configuration of 2, 7. So look at the valency electron, which is the last number here. Fluorine is in group 7, and you can see there it is. There's fluorine. Fluorine is in group 7. Beryllium, group 2, you can know just by looking at that. So here, beryllium is in group 2. And then potassium, group 1. So you can, that's how you know. So there's potassium there. And then sulfur, the valency electron is 6. So sulfur is in group 6, which is here. Okay, right next to group 7. Okay, and we will conclude this video lesson for today. We will continue again, and we will start a new topic next week. Until then, thank you for watching. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.